That was all the opening Alex needed. He ducked under the support beam and kicked it with all his strength. The metal bar vibrated, and as Zarthok passed under it, it connected with the back of his head, throwing him off balance. Zarthok stumbled forward, crashing into the lockers with a loud bang. But Alex wasn't done yet. As Zarthok tried to regain his footing, Alex grabbed the fallen Virexian by the arm and twisted it behind his back, using the momentum to slam Zarthok into the lockers again, harder this time. "Give up, Zarthok," Alex said through gritted teeth, keeping a firm grip on the struggling Virexian. "You're not going to win this." The galaxy had not witnessed such widespread conflict in millennia. The Virexian Wars, as they were now called, had ravaged entire systems, leaving scars that would take generations to heal. What began as a clash of cultures and ideologies between the Terrans and the Virexians escalated into a full-scale war, pulling in allies and enemies alike. The Sci-Fi, an ancient and wise race, remained neutral for as long as possible, but even they were eventually drawn into the conflict. When the dust finally settled, a fragile peace emerged. The Virexians, once proud and unyielding, were forced to reconsider their ways, acknowledging that their rigid adherence to tradition had nearly led to their extinction. The Terrans, who had fought valiantly and with great innovation, emerged as a new power in the galaxy, earning both respect and fear from those who had underestimated them. The Sci-Fi, with their long lifespans and deep wisdom, played a crucial role in mediating the peace, reminding all parties of the importance of cooperation and understanding. In the aftermath of the wars, a new era began, one marked by the cautious integration of former enemies and allies alike. The most significant symbol of this integration was the establishment of joint educational institutions where young members of the three species, Terrans, Virexians, and Sci-Fi, could learn side by side. These schools were designed not only to educate, but also to foster a new generation of leaders who could bridge the gaps between their peoples. Yet the road to unity was not without its challenges. Old grudges and deep-seated prejudices lingered beneath the surface, creating an undercurrent of tension that threatened to disrupt the fragile peace. The schools became microcosms of the broader galaxy, where alliances were tested and conflicts often flared up, despite the best efforts of the teachers and administrators. Alex stood at the edge of the vast academy courtyard, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was the day he had been preparing for, ever since the announcement that Terran families would be allowed to send their children to the newly integrated academies. For Alex's family, it was a momentous occasion. Both of Alex's parents had served in the war, his father as a strategist, his mother as a medic. They had seen the horrors of the conflict firsthand and had worked tirelessly to help build the peace that followed. Sending Alex to this academy was their way of investing in the future. A future where the next generation would hopefully not repeat the mistakes of the past. But as much as Alex understood the importance of this opportunity, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of apprehension. The stories he had heard about the academy were daunting. Tales of Sci-Fi students towering over their classmates, their massive forms casting long shadows down the corridors, of Virexians swift and cunning, using their small size and agility to cause all manner of mischief, and of Terran students who struggled to find their place among such diverse and often intimidating peers. Alex's parents had tried to ease his fears, reminding him of the importance of bravery and resilience. "You're a Terran," his father had said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've always been quick to adapt, quick to learn. You'll find your way." Still, as the same time to enter the academy drew near, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to step into a world far more complex and challenging than anything he had ever known. The prospect of meeting students from species he had only read about in history texts was thrilling, but the fear of being targeted, of not fitting in, was overwhelming. Thankfully, Alex wasn't going into this alone. For years, he had been working on a personal project, a highly intelligent AI named Icarus. The AI was more than just a tool. It was a companion, a product of countless hours of coding, testing, and refinement. Integrated into a discrete earpiece, Icarus was designed to provide real-time information, tactical advice, and emotional support. It could access the Academy's database, calculate probabilities, and even predict potential social interactions based on Alex's input. "Icarus, you there?" Alex murmured as he hesitated in front of the gates. "Always, Alex," came the soft, confident reply in his ear. "Ready to face the unknown?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Alex replied, taking a deep breath. "Remember, we've been through every scenario," Icarus continued. "You've got this, and if you need anything, I'm just a thought away." The gates opened, revealing the sprawling campus beyond. The buildings, designed to accommodate the needs of all three species, were a blend of Terran practicality, Phyrexian efficiency, and Saranai grandeur. Students of all shapes and sizes moved about, some in groups, others alone, all with the same nervous energy that came with the start of a new school year. Alex hesitated for a moment before stepping through the gates. This was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him, but for the galaxy as a whole. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Alex was determined to make his parents proud, to prove that he could thrive in this new era of unity and cooperation. With a final glance back at the gates, Alex stepped forward, Icarus quietly offering reassurance in his ear, ready to face whatever the Academy had in store. The Academy was everything Alex had imagined, and more. As he stepped through the massive gates, the sheer scale of the place struck him. The buildings, towering and grand, seemed to blend the architectural styles of all three species, creating a campus that was both alien and familiar. The walls of the Academy were lined with intricate carvings, some clearly of Terran design, while others bore the flowing, organic curves of Saranai artistry or the angular, precise lines typical of Phyrexian craftsmanship. The halls were equally impressive, wide enough to accommodate even the largest Saranai, and filled with students from all three species. The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridors, a mix of heavy thuds from the Saranai and the lighter, more rapid steps of the Phyrexians. Alex couldn't help but feel small as he made his way through the throng of students. The Saranai, towering over everyone else, moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their presence commanding respect. However, it didn't take long for Alex to notice something else about them. They weren't just slow physically. They were slow mentally, too. Conversations with them were drawn out, their thoughts taking what seemed like ages to fully form. Despite their impressive size and strength, there was a simplicity to the way they interacted, a certain dullness in their gaze that made Alex wonder how they could keep up with the complexities of the curriculum. The Phyrexians, on the other hand, were the polar opposite. They darted around quickly, their multifaceted eyes constantly scanning their surroundings for opportunities to cause mischief. Quick-witted and sharp, the Phyrexians seemed to thrive on chaos, their behavior erratic and unpredictable. Alex's heart raced as he tried to take it all in. He had read about the Saranai and Phyrexians, of course, but seeing them in person was entirely different. The Saranai were even larger than he had imagined, their thick, scaled skin glinting in the light. Each step they took seemed to vibrate through the floor, a reminder of their immense strength. But despite their physical power, Alex noticed how slowly they responded to their surroundings, as if the world moved at a different pace for them. As he moved through the halls, Alex felt like an outsider, lost in a sea of beings who were nothing like him. He was used to being around other Terrans, but here, in this place, he was just one of many species, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and social dynamics. He wondered how he would fit in, or if he even could. "Icarus," Alex whispered as he passed a particularly imposing Saranai. "Any tips?" "Stay calm," Icarus replied, his voice a steady presence in Alex's ear. "Remember, everyone here is just as new as you are. Observe, learn, and adapt. You've got this." Despite Icarus's reassurance, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. As he navigated the corridors, he had his first interactions with other students. A group of Saranai walked past him, their massive forms casting long shadows. One of them nodded in Alex's direction, a gesture that Alex wasn't sure how to interpret. Was it a greeting, an acknowledgement, or something else entirely? He nodded back, hoping it was the right response. Further down the hall, a group of Phyrexians were gathered near a set of lockers, clicking and hissing to each other in their native language. As Alex approached, they quieted down, their multifaceted eyes turning towards him. Alex could feel their gazes following him as he passed, but he kept his head down, focusing on the map of the school on his tablet. Best to avoid them for now, Icarus advised. Phyrexians can be unpredictable, especially in groups. Alex agreed, quickening his pace. He had heard stories about the Phyrexians and their penchant for causing trouble, and the last thing he wanted on his first day was to become their target. Despite his nerves, he managed to find his way to his first class without incident, though the sense of unease lingered. The hallways were quieter than usual as Alex made his way to his next class. He had taken a different route, hoping to avoid any unnecessary attention, especially from Zarthok and his gang. But it seemed fate had other plans. As he turned a corner, Alex found himself face to face with Zarthok, who was flanked by two of his cronies, their mandibles clicking ominously. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Zarthok hissed, a twisted grin spreading across his face. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with mischief. "The brave little Terran who thinks he's smart." Alex's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Remember what Dad said, he thought. Stay calm, be smart, and don't show fear. "What do you want, Zarthok?" Alex asked, keeping his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his gut. Zarthok took a step closer, towering over Alex. "I want to see what you're really made of," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You think you can just walk around here acting like you belong? Like you're better than us?" "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Alex replied, his mind racing as he tried to assess the situation. He glanced around, noting the narrowness of the hallway and the distance to the nearest exit, but he wasn't looking for a way out. He was planning his next move. The two Phyrexians on either side of Zarthok began clicking and hissing, their tone mocking. "The Terran's scared," one of them taunted, moving closer. "I can smell it." Alex's grip tightened on his tablet. He had been working on something for just this kind of situation, a small device designed to emit a high-pitched frequency that was unbearable to Phyrexians. It was risky, but he didn't see another way out. "Icarus?" Alex whispered under his breath, knowing the AI could hear him. "Get ready to activate the device." "Understood, Alex." Icarus responded quietly, his tone calm and focused. Zarthok laughed, mistaking Alex's whisper for a sign of weakness. "What's wrong? Got nothing to say, Terran?" Alex took a deep breath, forcing himself to meet Zarthok's gaze. "I have plenty to say," he replied. "But I think actions speak louder than words." Before Zarthok could react, Alex let his tablet slip from his hands, the device clattering loudly to the floor. The sudden movement drew the Phyrexian's attention, just as Alex had hoped. "What are you?" Zarthok started, but he was cut off by the sharp, piercing sound that suddenly filled the hallway. Alex had activated the device. The effect was immediate. Zarthok and his gang recoiled, their mandibles clicking in pain as they clutched at their heads. The sound was too high-pitched for them to bear, a frequency perfectly tuned to disrupt their senses. They staggered back, momentarily incapacitated. But instead of running, Alex stood his ground. He crossed his arms, watching calmly as Zarthok struggled to regain his composure. The Phyrexian leader's eyes narrowed in pain and anger, but Alex didn't flinch. He knew that showing fear now would only encourage them to try again later. After what felt like an eternity, Zarthok managed to shake off the effects of the device, his mandibles clicking furiously. He glared at Alex, clearly furious, but there was something else in his gaze, a grudging respect. "You think you're clever, Terran?" Zarthok spat, still recovering from the sound. "But this isn't over." "Maybe not," Alex replied coolly. "But I'm not afraid of you, Zarthok. Try this again, and you'll find out just how clever I can be." Zarthok's followers, still disoriented, looked to their leader for guidance. Zarthok hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. "Let's go," he muttered, motioning for them to follow him. The three Phyrexians turned and stalked down the hallway, their pride clearly wounded. As they disappeared around the corner, Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He reached down, picked up his tablet, and deactivated the device, the hallway returning to its normal quiet.
"You handled that well, Alex,"
Icarus said in his ear.
"Standing your ground was the right call."
"Thanks, Icarus," Alex replied, his voice steady, but his heart still racing. "I guess we'll see if it was enough." With a final glance down the hallway, Alex walked away triumphantly, feeling a mix of relief and determination. Zarthok had learned today that Alex wasn't someone to be pushed around, and that was a victory he could be proud of. A week had passed since the confrontation with Zarthok, and much to Alex's surprise, things had been quiet. Too quiet. The Virexian leader and his gang hadn't approached him, and there were no signs of retaliation. Alex had allowed himself to relax, just a little, but he knew better than to let his guard down completely. Zarthok wasn't the type to let a slight go unanswered. Sure enough, as the new week began, Alex found himself once again facing the Virexian bully. But this time, Zarthok didn't bother with words. It was during one of the longer breaks between classes, when the hallways were mostly empty. Alex was reviewing his notes in a quiet corner of the academy when he heard the familiar clicking and hissing behind him. He turned to see Zarthok and his cronies approaching, their mandibles snapping aggressively.
"So, the Terran thinks he can outsmart me and then hide away."
Zarthok's voice was low and dangerous, devoid of the mocking tone he'd used before.
"You've had your fun, Alex. But this ends today."
Alex stood up slowly, his mind already racing through potential scenarios. He knew this wasn't going to be a simple encounter like last time. Zarthok was out for revenge, and this time, he wouldn't be satisfied with just intimidation.
"Back for more, Zarthok?"
Alex asked, keeping his voice calm.
"I thought you learned your lesson."
Zarthok sneered, stepping closer.
"You got lucky once. This time, I'm not holding back."
The Virexian moved with surprising speed, lunging at Alex with his powerful arms. But Alex had been ready for something like this. He sidestepped just in time, feeling the rush of air as Zarthok's swing missed him by inches.
"Icarus, any suggestions?"
Alex murmured as he dodged another attack.
"Use your environment, Alex."
Icarus responded quickly.
"You're faster and more agile than he is. Keep moving, and don't let him corner you."
Alex nodded subtly, already putting the advice into action. The hallway was narrow, but there were enough obstacles, lockers, benches, and support pillars that he could use to his advantage. As Zarthok charged again, Alex ducked behind a row of lockers, forcing the larger Virexian to slow down and maneuver around them.
"You can't hide forever, Terran!"
Zarthok growled, but Alex was already on the move. He darted from one side of the hallway to the other, using the pillars as cover, while he planned his next move. As he dodged another swipe from Zarthok, Alex spotted an opportunity. One of the support beams ahead was low enough that even a Virexian would have to duck slightly to get under it. If Alex could time it right, he could use it to his advantage.
"Icarus, when I give the signal, distract him with an alert on his communicator,"
Alex whispered, already positioning himself.
"Understood,"
Icarus replied, ready to execute the plan. Zarthok, growing frustrated with Alex's evasive maneuvers, charged again, his mandible clicking in anger. But just as he closed in, his communicator beeped loudly, flashing a red warning light. Distracted for a split second, Zarthok glanced down at the device. That was all the opening Alex needed. He ducked under the support beam and kicked it with all his strength. The metal bar vibrated, and as Zarthok passed under it, it connected with the back of his head, throwing him off balance. Zarthok stumbled forward, crashing into the lockers with a loud bang. But Alex wasn't done yet. As Zarthok tried to regain his footing, Alex grabbed the fallen Virexian by the arm and twisted it behind his back, using the momentum to slam Zarthok into the lockers again, harder this time.
"Give up, Zarthok,"
Alex said through gritted teeth, keeping a firm grip on the struggling Virexian.
"You're not going to win this."
Zarthok let out a furious hiss, but Alex held his ground, using every ounce of his strength to keep the larger Virexian pinned. The struggle was intense, and Alex could feel his muscles straining, but he didn't let up. He knew he had to end this once and for all. Finally, Zarthok's resistance began to weaken. The initial burst of anger and energy had drained him, and now he was simply trying to free himself from Alex's hold. But Alex wasn't about to let that happen. With one final push, he forced Zarthok down to the ground, holding him there until the Virexian stopped struggling.
Enough!
Zarthok spat, his voice laced with both pain and frustration.
Enough, Terran!
Alex released him cautiously, stepping back but keeping his guard up in case Zarthok tried something else. But the Virexian didn't move. He lay there for a moment, breathing heavily, before finally sitting up and glaring at Alex.
You've proven your point,
Zarthok said bitterly, rubbing the back of his head where the beam had hit him.
But this isn't over.
Alex shook his head, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief.
It's over, Zarthok. If you come at me again, I'll do worse than this.
For a long moment, the two stared at each other, neither backing down. Then, finally, Zarthok looked away, his pride clearly wounded, but his anger starting to fade.
Fine,
he muttered, getting to his feet.
You win this round, Terran. But you better watch your back. Same goes for you,
Alex replied, standing tall despite the ache in his muscles.
But maybe next time we can try something other than fighting.
Zarthok snorted, but there was a hint of grudging respect in his eyes.
We'll see.
With that, Zarthok turned and walked away, his cronies following behind, leaving Alex alone in the hallway. As the adrenaline began to wear off, Alex leaned against the lockers, taking a deep breath.
Thanks for the help, Icarus,
he said quietly.
You did well, Alex.
Icarus replied, his tone warm with approval.
You've shown Zarthok that you're not someone to be messed with. Let's hope he got that message,
Alex muttered, pushing himself off the lockers. He was tired, sore, but ultimately satisfied. Zarthok wouldn't be bothering him again, not if he knew what was good for him. With a final glance down the now empty hallway, Alex walked away, his head held high. He had won, not just through brute force, but by using his intellect, agility, and strength. And that victory meant more to him than any simple fight could. The days following Alex's victory over Zarthok were transformative. The word had spread quickly throughout the school, and now, wherever Alex went, there were whispers of respect and admiration. His status had solidified. He was no longer just another Terran student, but someone who had proven himself capable of standing up to the toughest challenges the Academy could throw at him. As Alex navigated the hallways, he began to notice something he hadn't fully appreciated before. The Saranai students. They were physically imposing, with their towering frames and slow, deliberate movements, but it was clear that their strength didn't extend to every aspect of their lives at the Academy. In classes, they often struggled to keep up, their slow wits making it difficult for them to grasp complex concepts as quickly as the other students. Socially, they were even more isolated, often misunderstood and overlooked by their peers. One day, after class, Alex noticed a Saranai named Therak lingering behind as the other students left. Therak was larger than most, with dark green scales that shimmered slightly under the classroom lights. He was staring at his datapad, his brow furrowed in frustration.
Hey, Therak,
Alex called out, walking over to him.
Everything okay?
Therak looked up slowly, his large eyes blinking as he processed the question.
Struggling,
he rumbled, his voice deep and slow.
This calculation does not make sense.
Alex glanced at the datapad and quickly realized what the problem was. The calculation was part of an advanced physics problem, something that would be challenging for anyone, but particularly difficult for a Saranai who processed information at a different pace.
Mind if I help?
Alex offered, pulling up a chair next to Therak. Therak hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering between Alex and the datapad. Then, with a slow nod, he handed the device to Alex.
Thank you,
Therak said, his voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. Over the next hour, Alex patiently walked Therak through the problem. He took his time, explaining each step clearly and slowly, making sure Therak understood before moving on. It was challenging, requiring Alex to rethink how he explained concepts, but he could see the relief on Therak's face as the Saranai started to grasp the material.
See? It's all about breaking it down to smaller steps,
Alex explained, demonstrating how to approach the problem in a way that made sense for Therak's slower, more deliberate thought process. Therak nodded slowly, his eyes lighting up with understanding.
"You make it clear,"
he said.
"Easier to follow."
After that, word began to spread among the Saranai students. They had always admired Alex's strength and courage, but now they saw him as someone who genuinely cared about helping others, even those who were often overlooked. It wasn't long before the other Saranai started approaching Alex for help, each of them bringing their own challenges and struggles. Alex quickly found himself tutoring several Saranai students, guiding them through difficult subjects like math, science, and even social studies. It was hard work, requiring patience and creativity, but Alex enjoyed it. He liked seeing the look of comprehension on their faces when something finally clicked, and he appreciated the chance to make a difference in their lives. One afternoon, after helping a Saranai named Krull with an essay, Alex noticed a group of Terran students whispering nearby. They were watching him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "What's he doing helping them?" one of them muttered. "They're not going to get it anyway." Alex felt a flash of irritation, but kept his voice calm. "They're trying, and that's what matters. Everyone learns differently." The Terrans shrugged, clearly unconvinced, but they didn't say anything more. Alex could tell that his decision to help the Saranai wasn't universally popular, but he didn't care. He knew he was doing the right thing. As the weeks went by, Alex's bond with the Saranai students deepened. They began to see him not just as a tutor, but as a leader, someone they could trust and rely on. Whenever someone spoke negatively about Alex or tried to challenge him, the Saranai were quick to step in, using their sheer size and strength to deter any potential troublemakers. One day, as Alex was walking to class, Therak fell into step beside him. The Saranai moved slowly, but there was a newfound confidence in his stride.
"You are a good leader, Alex,"
Therak said, his voice filled with sincerity.
"We appreciate what you do."
Alex smiled, feeling a sense of pride in the friendships he had built. "Thanks, Therak. I'm just glad I can help."
"You do more than help,"
Therak replied, placing a large, reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder.
"You make us better."
Alex nodded, grateful for the support of his Saranai friends. He knew that in a place as challenging as the Academy, it was important to have allies, especially ones as strong and loyal as the Saranai. With their support, Alex felt more confident than ever. He had earned the respect of his peers, not just through strength, but by being someone who cared about others and was willing to put in the effort to help them succeed. And as the school year continued, he knew that his loyalty would be invaluable in the challenges that lay ahead. The confrontation with Zarthok had shifted the dynamics of the school in more ways than Alex had initially realized. While his victory had solidified status among the Terrans and earned him the loyalty of the Saranai, it also had a surprising effect on some of the Phyrexians. Not all of them had agreed with Zarthok's methods or his approach to dominance through intimidation, and Alex's refusal to back down had given them something to think about. One afternoon, Alex was sitting in the library working on an assignment when he noticed a group of Phyrexians nearby. They weren't the usual troublemakers. These Phyrexians were quieter, more reserved, and seemed to be struggling with their studies. They kept to themselves, occasionally whispering in their clicking language, but it was clear they were frustrated. Alex watched them for a moment, considering his options. His experience with Zarthok had taught him that not all Phyrexians were the same, and perhaps these ones just needed a different kind of support. After all, he had managed to help the Saranai. Why not the Phyrexians too? "Icarus," Alex whispered, leaning slightly closer to his earpiece. "What's your take on this?"
"They seem to be struggling with their studies."
Icarus replied softly.
"It could be an opportunity to reach out and offer help, but tread carefully. Phyrexians value pride, and they might not take kindly to an offer of assistance."
Alex nodded, appreciating the advice. He approached the group slowly, making sure not to appear threatening or overbearing. The Phyrexians noticed him coming and quieted down, their multifaceted eyes watching him cautiously. "Hey," Alex said, offering a small, non-threatening smile.
I noticed you guys seem to be having a tough time with your work. I've had some experience with these assignments. Mind if I lend a hand?
The Virexians exchanged glances, their mandibles clicking softly as they communicated in their own way. Finally, one of them, a smaller Virexian with deep blue markings, spoke up. "Why would you help us, Terran?" she asked, her tone more curious than hostile. Alex shrugged, keeping his tone casual.
Why not? We're all trying to get through this place, right? Maybe we can help each other out.
The Virexian seemed to consider this for a moment. The leader of the group, a slightly larger Virexian with a cautious expression, finally nodded.
We could use the help, he admitted, his voice low. These calculations, they do not come easily.
Alex sat down with him, pulling out his tablet and looking over the assignments they were struggling with. The calculations were tricky, but nothing he couldn't handle with a bit of focus. As he began explaining the concepts, he noticed that the Virexians were surprisingly attentive. They weren't slow learners by any means. They simply processed information differently, much like the Saranai, but in their own unique way. As the session continued, Alex noticed that the Virexians began to relax, their initial wariness fading as they realized he wasn't there to judge or belittle them. He was there to help, and they appreciated it.
You explain clearly,
the leader of the group said after a while, his tone respectful.
We did not expect this from a Terran.
Alex smiled, leaning back in his chair.
I think we all have more in common than we realize. It's just about finding the right way to communicate.
Over the next few days, Alex continued to spend time with the Virexians, helping them with their studies and getting to know them better. He learned that many of them were just as frustrated with Zarthok's aggressive tactics as he was, but they didn't feel like they had the strength or the support to stand up against him.
I know Zarthok gives your species a bad reputation,
Alex said one day, as he and a few of the Virexians worked on an assignment in the courtyard.
But that doesn't mean you have to follow his lead. You can be strong in your own way.
One of the Virexians, a smaller one named Krika, looked up at him, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "You think we can change things?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of hope and doubt.
I do,
Alex replied firmly.
But it takes effort. It's not about being the toughest or the loudest. It's about being smart, working together, and showing everyone what you're really capable of.
Krika and the others seemed to take his words to heart. Over the next few weeks, Alex noticed a change in them. They began to stand up for themselves more, not through confrontation, but by excelling in their studies and contributing positively in class discussions. They stopped hiding in the shadows and started asserting themselves in ways that earned them respect, not fear. One day, as Alex was walking through the halls, he overheard a conversation between two Terran students. "Did you hear about the Virexians in our math class?" one of them asked. "They've really stepped up their game lately." "Yeah, I heard Alex has been helping them out," the other replied. "Seems like they're not so bad after all." Alex smiled to himself, feeling a sense of satisfaction. He knew that changing the status quo wasn't easy, but he was proud of the progress the Virexians were making. They were proving that they were more than just troublemakers, and that with the right support, they could thrive. As the school year continued, the bond between Alex and the Virexians deepened. They began to see him not just as a mentor, but as an ally, someone who understood their struggles and was willing to stand by them. And in return, they offered him their loyalty, ready to defend him just as he had defended them. Alex knew that the journey wasn't over, and that there would be more challenges ahead, but with the support of the Saranai, the Virexians, and his fellow Terrans, he felt more confident than ever that they could face whatever came their way together. The months that followed Alex's victory over Zarthok had been marked by a new sense of order within the academy. With the support of the Saranai and the unexpected alliance with some of the Virexians, Alex had become a respected figure among the students. He had established himself not just as a leader, but as someone who could unite students across species lines. Yet, despite this success, there was an undercurrent of tension that Alex couldn't quite shake. Zarthok had been unusually quiet since their last encounter. He hadn't confronted Alex again, and for a while, it seemed like he had finally accepted his defeat. But Alex knew better than to let his guard down. Zarthok wasn't the type to give up so easily. And there was something in the way he and his remaining followers carried themselves that suggested the calm was only temporary. As the school year progressed, Alex began to notice subtle changes in Zarthok's behavior. The Phyrexian leader no longer prowled the halls with the same overt aggression, but there was a coldness to his demeanor that hadn't been there before. Zarthok's eyes seemed to linger on Alex whenever they crossed paths, filled with a burning resentment that was impossible to ignore.
Icarus, have you noticed anything unusual about Zarthok lately?
Alex asked one day as he walked to class.
Indeed,
Icarus replied, his tone cautious.
Zarthok has been more reclusive, but I've observed increased activity among his remaining loyalists. It's subtle, but they've been meeting more frequently, often in secluded areas of the academy.
Alex frowned, processing the information.
Do you think he's planning something? It's possible,
Icarus said.
While Zarthok hasn't made any direct moves against you, the pattern suggests he might be gathering support for one final confrontation.
The thought of another showdown with Zarthok didn't sit well with Alex, but he knew it was inevitable. Zarthok's pride had been wounded deeply, and the only way he would feel satisfied was by reclaiming his lost dominance. As the weeks passed, the tension in the air grew thicker. Alex began to notice other signs of trouble, small, seemingly unrelated incidents that added up to a larger picture. There were rumors of Phyrexians gathering in the early hours before classes, whispers of secret meetings in the far corners of the academy, and a sense of unease that seemed to permeate the student body. One afternoon, while walking through the courtyard, Alex spotted Zarthok talking quietly with a group of Phyrexians. They were standing close together, their mandibles clicking softly as they exchanged words. When Zarthok noticed Alex watching, he didn't look away. Instead, he held Alex's gaze, a smirk playing on his lips, before he turned back to his followers.
I don't like this,
Alex muttered to himself as he continued on his way, feeling a shiver of unease run down his spine.
Stay vigilant, Alex,
Icarus advised.
It's clear that Zarthok is planning something. We need to be prepared for whatever he has in mind.
Alex nodded, determined not to let his guard down. He began to gather his own allies, subtly letting the Saranai and the Phyrexians he had helped know that something might be brewing. He didn't want to alarm them, but he needed to make sure they were ready to stand by him if things escalated. As the days passed, the atmosphere at the academy became more charged. The tension was palpable, and Alex could sense that a major event was about to unfold. Even the teachers seemed to be on edge, though they remained unaware of the undercurrents running through the student body. Then, one day, as Alex was heading to his final class of the afternoon, he received a message on his tablet. It was from one of the Phyrexians he had mentored, a student named Krika.
Be careful, Alex. I overheard Zarthok talking. He's planning something big, and it's happening soon. He didn't say when, but it's clear he wants to settle the score.
Alex's heart sank as he read the message. It was exactly what he had feared, but now there was no doubt. Zarthok was planning one final confrontation, and Alex knew he had to be ready.
Looks like the storm's coming,
Alex said quietly.
Yes,
Icarus agreed, his voice steady.
But remember, you're not alone in this. You have allies, strong ones. Whatever Zarthok is planning, we'll face it together.
Alex took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He knew that the next few days would be critical, and that he would need to rely on every ounce of strength, intellect, and resolve he possessed. Zarthok's challenge was inevitable, but Alex was determined to face it head-on, knowing that his final battle would not only test him, but also the bonds he had forged throughout the year. The end of the school year was fast approaching, and the tension that had been building for weeks finally reached its breaking point. The atmosphere at the academy was thick with anticipation, as if everyone knew something big was about to happen. Alex had been on edge, keeping a close watch on Zarthok and his followers, but there was little he could do except wait for the inevitable. And then it happened. It was a bright, sunny afternoon, and the central courtyard was bustling with students enjoying the break between classes. Alex was sitting with a few friends, discussing their plans for the upcoming break, when he noticed the sudden quiet that fell over the courtyard. The usual chatter and laughter had died down, replaced by an uneasy silence. Alex looked up and saw Zarthok and his followers approaching. There were more of them than usual, a lot more. They moved with purpose, their eyes locked on Alex, and it was clear
They weren't here for a friendly chat.
Alex,
Icarus's voice murmured in his ear.
they're coming for you. Stay calm.
Alex stood up slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the eyes of the other students on him as Zarthok's group closed in, forming a tight circle around him. There was no escape. This was it. The final showdown.
End of the line, Terran.
Zarthok hissed, a cruel smile spreading across his face.
It's time to settle the score once and for all.
The crowd that had gathered watched in silence with some fear, others with curiosity. Alex could see the nervous faces of his friends, the Saranai and the Virexians he had helped, but none of them moved. Zarthok's group was large, and it was clear that this wasn't going to be a fair fight.
You've been a thorn in my side for too long, Alex.
Zarthok continued, his mandibles clicking in anger.
You think you're better than us? Smarter? Stronger? Let's see how you handle this.
Without warning, Zarthok lunged at Alex, and the fight began. Alex barely had time to react, as Zarthok's attack came at him with brutal force. He managed to dodge the first strike, but another Virexian was already coming at him from the side. Alex blocked the attack with his forearm, but the sheer number of opponents made it impossible to defend against them all. Blow after blow rained down on him as Zarthok's followers swarmed. Alex fought back with everything he had, using the agility and strength he had honed over the school year. He ducked and weaved, landing punches and kicks where he could, but for every attacker he pushed back, two more took their place.
Stay focused, Alex,
Icarus urged, his voice tense.
Remember your training. Use their numbers against them.
But even with Icarus's guidance, Alex was struggling. Zarthok was relentless, his attacks fueled by months of simmering resentment. The other Virexians fought with vicious determination, eager to prove their loyalty to their leader. Alex could feel his strength waning, his movements becoming slower, more desperate. A well-paced punch from one of the Virexians sent Alex staggering backward, crashing into the fountain into the center of the courtyard. He barely managed to stay on his feet, but the brief moment of disorientation was enough for Zarthok to close in, landing a powerful blow to Alex's side that sent him sprawling to the ground. The world seemed to blur as Alex struggled to push himself up, his vision swimming. He could hear the crowd around him, their whispers of doubt and fear cutting through the haze.
He's not going to make it,
someone muttered. He's outnumbered. There's no way he can win this. Alex gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand despite the pain coursing through his body. He couldn't give up now, not after everything he had fought for, everything he had achieved. Zarthok stood over him, a triumphant grin on his face.
This is the end for you, Terran,
he sneered, raising his fist for the final blow. But just as Zarthok's fist came down, Alex found the strength to move, rolling out of the way at the last second. He pushed himself up, breathing hard, and turned to face his attackers once more.
I'm not done yet,
Alex said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his limbs.
You might outnumber me, but that doesn't mean you've won.
Zarthok's grin faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered.
You're only delaying the inevitable, Alex,
he growled.
You're all alone. No one's coming to save you.
Alex's heart sank as he realized Zarthok was right. The students who had gathered to watch weren't moving to help. They were too scared, too unsure of what to do. And as much as Alex wanted to believe he could take on Zarthok's entire group by himself, the truth was that he was overwhelmed. But even in that moment of doubt, Alex refused to back down. He raised his fists, ready to fight to the last breath, determined to hold on to the respect he had worked so hard to earn. As Alex braced himself for what he thought might be the final blow, a shout rang out across the courtyard, cutting through the tension like a knife.
Leave him alone.
Alex looked up in surprise to see Therak, the Saranai he had helped with his studies, charging toward the fray. The towering figure of Therak was soon followed by several other Saranai, their massive forms moving with purpose. They quickly positioned themselves around Alex, creating a protective wall between him and Zarthok's group.
You will not hurt him,
Therak rumbled, his voice filled with a quiet, unshakable resolve. Zarthok hesitated, clearly taken aback by the sudden arrival of Alex's allies. Before he could react, a group of Virexians darted into the fray, their swift movements a stark contrast to the Saranai's steady advance. Among them was Krika, the Virexian princess Alex had mentored. She led the group with a fierce determination,
her multifaceted eyes locking onto Zarthok. "This ends now, Zarthok," Krika hissed, her tone commanding. "You're not the leader you think you are." The sudden shift in numbers caught Zarthok off guard. His confidence wavered as he saw the Saranai blocking his path and the Virexians outmaneuvering his followers. The power dynamic that had been so heavily in his favor moments ago was now rapidly slipping away. But it didn't stop there. From the edges of the courtyard, Terran students, those who had watched Alex stand up for others, who had seen his kindness and strength, began to step forward. They didn't have the raw power of the Saranai or the agility of the Virexians, but they brought their own strengths to the table: strategy, coordination, and unwavering loyalty to their friend. "Alex has always had our backs," Maya, one of Alex's Terran friends, shouted as she moved to stand beside him. "Now it's our turn." The scene was almost surreal. Alex, who had been moments away from defeat, was now surrounded by a united front of students from all three species. Together, they formed a force that even Zarthok couldn't ignore.
"Stay back, Alex,"
Therak said as he moved to block Zarthok's advance.
"We will handle this."
"Yeah, you're not alone in this fight," Krika added, her tone fierce. "We're with you." Zarthok growled, clearly furious at this turn of events. He tried to rally his followers, but they were no longer as confident as they had been. Some of them glanced nervously at the united front before them, unsure of their next move. "Don't just stand there!" Zarthok barked at his group. "Take them down!" But the Virexians in Zarthok's group hesitated. They could see that the tide had turned, and they were no longer as eager to follow Zarthok's orders. One by one, they began to step back, their resolve crumbling as they saw the overwhelming support Alex had garnered. Seeing his followers waver, Zarthok's anger turned to desperation. He lunged at Alex, but Therak was ready. With a single powerful motion, Therak intercepted Zarthok, using his immense strength to push him back. At the same time, Krika and her Virexians moved in with precision, using their agility to outmaneuver Zarthok's remaining loyalists. "Enough, Zarthok!" Krika commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You've lost!" Zarthok struggled against Therak's hold, his mandibles clicking in frustration. He knew he was outmatched, physically, strategically, and now, even in terms of loyalty. His followers, seeing the futility of continuing to fight, began to back away, leaving Zarthok isolated and defeated. Realizing he was truly alone, Zarthok finally stopped struggling. He looked around at the faces of those who had once followed him, now watching from a distance, no longer willing to fight for his cause. The realization hit him hard. He hadn't just lost the fight, he had lost the respect of his peers. With a final bitter glare at Alex, Zarthok shrugged off Therak's hold and turned to leave. He stalked away from the courtyard, his shoulders hunched in humiliation, his loyalists scattering in his wake. As the tension in the courtyard eased, Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had come so close to losing everything, but in the end, it was the bonds he had forged that saved him. His friends, his allies, they had stood by him when he needed them most. "Thank you," Alex said, his voice filled with gratitude as he looked around at the students who had come to his aid. Therak gave a slow nod, his large eyes filled with warmth.
"You helped us, Alex,"
he said simply.
"We help you."
Krika stepped forward, a small smile on her lips. "You've earned our respect, Alex, and that's something no one can take away." The courtyard slowly began to return to normal as students dispersed, but the impact of what had just happened lingered in the air. Alex knew this wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for everyone who had chosen to stand together, regardless of their species or differences. As he walked away from the courtyard, surrounded by his friends, Alex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. They had faced Zarthok's challenge together, and in doing so, they had proven that unity was stronger than any force that tried to tear them apart.